One of the things we really wanted to focus in on while we're building the studio was to bring up the level of production quality locally. And that meant bringing in the larger lights that bring in bigger cameras, and even the stuff, the ecosystem around those, the things that people don't always think of. One of the main issues about being outside of a large metropolitan area like Toronto is access to higher level gear. Going beyond that basic level, you need to get into more specialist stores that simply just don't exist due to the population in our area.
Any breakdowns, anything, any new equipment, we need to go out of area.
So all of that gear we wanted to bring to Belleville to help smaller to medium brands grow and be able to offer them international level quality at a local advantage. I feel like, so when we get there, the hardest part is going to be saying, we need this versus we want this. That's going to be the hard part.
Always the problem. So what are we doing today?
So this guy has a broken handle. So yep. This guy right here, the big boy, we just got him, and this already doesn't work. The 1200 aperture from user error had been damaged, and we needed to get it fixed. And we also needed to pick up a larger light stand to be able to fit that light, and nowhere locally would have that at all. So we have to travel directly to them, 2 hours out there, 2 hours back, to make sure we can get it fixed, to make sure we can get the gear that we need. As you build up a team and as you build up your crew, one of the things that's bound to happen is eventually there's going to be some gear breakages on set. In our case, it was our brightest, most beautiful light that we'd ever had. We were all super excited. It was a big deal bringing it into the studio, was our Aperture 1200. And that guy has enough light to basically overpower the sun if we wanted to. We had it out on a few shoots, and one of the grips ended up over tightening a spoke, and we had to get it sent back because we'd stripped, there's like a teeth in the actual yoke mechanism, and I had to go back to Toronto.
The nice thing about what we're doing with this studio is that we're filling kind of a gap in the market. Now, it's kind of a double-edged sword because there's just not the infrastructure here to service our equipment. So any breakdowns, anything, any new equipment, we need to go out of area to pick up. And that's, you know, a common business problem to have, I think, in a small town. As we're growing this business and bringing more opportunity to the area in the field of production, that means we have to upgrade our equipment, we have to service our equipment. We don't have really any other option, and there's only so much equipment that you can order off of Amazon before you have to start getting into a specialty shop like a VizTech, for example. Really, it's an exercise in self-control. We had to really limit ourselves, and I would argue that we didn't exactly limit ourselves, but we got what we needed.
Spend enough money today? That is a full vehicle. What do you think?
You're buying lunch, right?
Sure. We can get this behind you.
But it's kind of one of those things where you need to weigh, as a business owner, you need to weigh, is it worth another day to drive up again when I need something else down the road in a week or 2 weeks or whatever, versus being there right now. Should I just buy that piece of equipment that I need and then we'll have it for the next project? Or do you wait until you actually need it?
And we've also started to notice as Canada gets a little bit warmer, we're just over 0 degrees the other day, we started to notice that the back room and the front room is starting to get quite hot. And so we might have to look into doing an AC unit, and that might change our plans significantly. This wasn't something that we'd actually thought about when coming in here, because we came in here back in February and it was cold. And so we had a heater, and that's all we were ready for. It's like, we have a heater, we're good. We didn't stop to think about that heat when it rose, where does it go? And if it does get really hot outside, how do we keep the heat from coming in? So that's gonna be an issue we're gonna have to eventually figure out as we get warmer. There was no consideration for AC or anything like that because I've been so focused on how much does it cost. So when we had a capital injection, we kind of planned out what it would look like to put some labor into the space, how to make it look the way we wanted, like the decorating of it, the prepping of the kind of the space to be a creative space. So these are things that weren't initially in the budget and really planned out for.
Ash and I are not real techie people. I'm techie when it comes to camera specific things and being a DP. I'm not a studio tech, and basically what Ash is building in the front podcast set is a studio environment. So to the best of my ability, I'm doing research and what's cost effective.
But you get audio fed right into the video as well, right?
You do, exactly.
So you don't need to do a sync afterwards.
No, then you would just have like a WAV file to send to them for putting up on.
So if they wanted to do a pure audio podcast, they could do that.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we got this new soundboard in, and I had to figure out how to wire everything together, plug the microphones in, and wire that into this new switcher board and get everything to work. And we were having just weird problems after problems. We didn't have the right cables, and when we had the right cables, stuff still wasn't working right. Because I'm giving Ash tech recommendations, and it's not my money that's being spent, it's Ash's money. I was really worried that, we bit off more than we could chew, and that maybe I had burnt a bunch of money that Ash couldn't really afford. Now, we've finally hit a point where everything is working together, and we've actually done a few recordings. And I've started a podcast, which was not something that I ever thought I would do. But the feedback has been fantastic. I've had 2 of my good buddies on already, and it works, which is very uplifting after a week of stress and bills racking up. I would say now we're pretty close to having the podcast technically ready to go. The podcast set is technically where it needs to be. It just needs to be wired nicely and set up nicely. But everything works now as it is supposed to. I think there's a lot of people that, if you've got a camera, you can have a podcast, or if you've got a microphone, you can have a podcast. But what Ash really wanted was the ability to have a high-end feel for a reasonable price. And part of that is keeping labor costs low. So if we have 3 cameras in our front set with several microphones, anywhere from 2 to 4 to 6, whatever, having to sync all of that up, meaning synchronize 3 cameras together with multiple audio tracks, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours in for an editor. The reason I had Ash invest in a soundboard and a video switcher board is once we hit record, our producer can switch back and forth from camera to camera, and as soon as we hit stop recording, we have a packaged product at the end of that. So instead of taking several days to produce one full podcast and then create all of the social media clips from that, now as soon as we hit stop, we've got the finished long form pillar content, and the editor can get to work with the client or us and start to produce small bite-sized social clips, and it cuts costs down a lot. It front loads a lot of cost because we have to buy the soundboard, the switcher board, all of the wiring, all of the cameras, but now in the long run, we have an infrastructure that can basically produce any sort of content in a long form and short form format. I've literally done 2 podcasts now, and from start to finish, we recorded a podcast in the morning and I was sending it out by the afternoon. That's how fast this process works for us.